Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to RPG Maker Code.
Hey everybody, welcome to the RPG Maker Cola podcast. I'm Cashmere Cat, otherwise known as Cash, and today we've got some incredible developers with us, and they're going to introduce themselves to us. But first I'd like to start with the developer on teams of the fabulous 3-chapter VX Ace game, Unfinished Stories, A Snowball's Chance, The Vindicators, Vindicators 2,
Rainbow Diamond,
the Swap in the Middle event game, Just in Time, 21 Years, a birthday game for Muffle, and perhaps most prominently, the lead developer of the amazing Sethstuck, Lavendersiren.
Hey.
Hey. So yeah, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Where do I even start? My name is Lavendersiren. I'm non-binary, and I'm from Oregon. I'm a jack of all trades when it comes to game development. Pretty much I can do almost anything you toss at me, as long as it's not, too heavy, you know. And I've been doing this sort of thing since, high school.
And I'd also like to introduce co-creator of Chromatic Aberration, Tiny's Adventure 2, Silver Edition, Breaded and Battered, and also creator of the fantastic XP adventure Fight for Life. It's Soul.
Thank you. So, the name's Travis Foster. I am 17 and I'm from Michigan. I started off with game development on this little platform called Scratch. You might have heard of it. 10 years ago, which is a long time ago. About 5 years ago, I discovered RPG Maker by a friend, and ever since then, I've been making RPG Maker games. I've also been doing Game Maker stuff and all sorts of things. I have a big imagination. Ever since I was little, I've wanted to create my own anything, basically. My own games, my own scenarios, TV shows. I'm just a creator by heart, I guess. And that's about it.
It's cool. Now they've got each other introduced. Our first segment is the Buzz Corner. So we're just going to talk about what RPG Maker games we've been seeing that are gaining buzz at the moment. There's a game by Old Pat, and it's called Acre, the Fragile Dance of the Broken Soul. I love Old Pat. He's an awesome developer. He's the developer of 2018's Missile-winning game Psych Lock, and just an all-round awesome guy, great sense of humor. So this game is described as a short 2D rhythm game with visual novel elements set in a feudal Japan-like scenario, which I thought was absolutely bonkers and stark raving mad, because I don't think there's been many good quality rhythm games in RPG Maker and RPG Maker MV. So it's got the scrolling arrow keys and everything, like Dance Dance Revolution. Since I've always thought that reaction times were not a strong suit for RPG Maker, like any classic rhythm game, the player will have to press right buttons at the right time, following the rhythm in order to defeat the enemy without losing. And I know Soul was a pretty big fan of Rhythm Heaven. Would that be correct?
Yeah. I'm a big rhythm game fan, ever since I got Rhythm Heaven for the DS.
And that's why this was really exciting to me, to combine that with feudal Japan, visual novel aspects, and just Old Pat's incredible art, storytelling aspect, makes for some crazy combination. And the screenshot looks really nice, so I just like the portraits, and looks like a really fun game. I hope it releases real soon.
Yeah, Old Pat has some crazy good polish when it comes to his artwork.
I'm yet to play Psych Lock. I want to stream it with him watching, but I stream way too not often enough, so.
Yeah, honestly, I still need to finish playing Psych Lock. I stopped halfway through because it was getting too intense for me, because dang. Considering it's a stealth game and I don't really play stealth games that often.
I love a good stealth game if it's implemented right.
It definitely is.
So, what about you, Lavender? What game have you got that's buzzing at the moment?
Well, I'm mostly looking at Joseph Serif's game Records in Blue. It's still in, really early development, but I always love looking at Joseph Serif's stuff. They just have the best freaking artistic style. It's just gorgeous.
It's a hybrid between a DRPG and a side-scroll exploration game. I'm guessing that's a dungeon RPG.
Yeah, one of those kind of first-person dungeon crawlers from the looks of it.
It uses like 3D exploration using some VX Ace plugin, it looks like. I've worked with Joseph before, and they're just like really intent on using these interesting and weird systems, using some like pre-rendered CG backgrounds for some of the stuff. From talking with Joseph, like very enamored with the PS1 aesthetic, and it really nails it here. I'm looking forward to this as well. A commercial game as well, which is always nice to see from one of our like fellow RMNites, RPGmaker.net users.
I really hope this game actually gets finished this time.
What about you, Sol?
Well, I was particularly interested in this one game called Heroes Realm by Kentona.
Yeah.
It was released a long time ago, like 12 years ago in 2007, but dang, I can't help but admire how good the game looks, especially because it's using the default RPG Maker asset. It's just a really nice and polished game to look at, and my friends had fun playing it, so I'm looking forward to playing it. Of course, that's when I have time, because most of my time is spent making games, so...
That's the thing you'll find with game developers. Sometimes if you want to be able to research other games, it's hard to make that time, to set aside the time to do that. Which is, of course, is created by Kentona, longtime admin of RPGmaker.net. And there's a commercial version going to be released in future, which had Kickstarter, or not Kickstarter, sorry, has a Patreon. So check that out, Heroes Realm commercial version, and go support that because we want that awesome game to come to fruition. The next segment is We Have Been Playing Games, Maybe? Hey, have you been playing games? If not, that's all cool. If so, talk about a game you're currently playing or have played, or explain why you've liked and disliked it and why. I'm really liking Chroma Core, which I'm cheating because it's another RPGmaker.net game, but it's not made within the RPG Maker engine, so I think I'm fine. It's a game created by Odd Rabbit, a trading card game. It doesn't have the official engine, but you do join a Discord server and create private games on a site called untap.in. It's a card game in the vein of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Vanguard, and Magic the Gathering. You place down cores to play Guardians and try to eliminate all 5 cores of the enemy by placing them in a damage zone. And I've been creating a custom deck called Of Mimics and Men, which teams mimics and men on the same side, subverting their traditional status of mortal enemies and teaming them up against a common evil. I love it. I think it's quite a fun card game. It was way more fun than I was expecting. Not that I was expecting it to be boring, but you think like, oh, just a trading card game, how fun could it be? And now I'm making custom decks for it and helping Odd to make databases for his card games and whatever, so I'm stuck at this point. Yes, so I'm really enjoying that. And as for non-RPG Maker games, because I cheated, I've been playing the heck out of Stardew Co-op with 2 of my friends. So Stardew Valley with a couple of friends.
Stardew Valley, huh? That's a good game.
Yeah. It's so good. I've been playing cooperative with a couple of my friends, and we just try and outdo each other by getting profit quicker than the other ones. So it's pretty much a competition. Stardew Valley's supposed to be a peaceful game about farming, but we've made it like a cutthroat competitive game about literally winning. So yeah, we've just kind of subverted that a bit. Yeah, it's the best for me. I enjoy it so much.
Lately I've been playing a lot of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The thing I really like about it is just like, the graphics. It's just beautiful. It's like watching a piece of art in motion. And of course, Alucard is absolutely hot.
Yeah, full admission, I have only played like a little bit of Castlevania games, but I have played so many games that have been inspired by Castlevania, Metroidvania, so I'm so like... I need to go back and Symphony of the Night.
One thing I will mention, though, it kind of does show its age, so, like, some of the things are a little bit janky with it, especially the menus.
It's one of those cases probably where so many games have been influenced by it that you start to think that it's not original, but it's the thing that started some of this particular genre.
Honestly, if you want to jump into a good Castlevania game that has the Metroidvania thing, go with Aria of Sorrow. That's, like, one of the best, and it has a lot less jank.
Right, yeah. That's for Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, you can also get it on the Wii U.
Oh, excellent. What about you, Sol?
So I brought this up earlier, But Rhythm Heaven, I've been playing that recently, and I've been enjoying the franchise a lot. I said earlier that I've been a fan of rhythm games, and well, this was basically an instant match for me. It's just so addictive just trying to get all of the games perfected. And my favorite game in the series has to be the DS game, even though there are some things that I kinda don't like about that particular version. Like having to swipe in order to complete some rhythm games.
And you have a Discord server for Rhythm Heaven.
Yeah, I do. With a lot of people who like the same series. We just hang out, play games together and all that. I'm a big fan of the franchise, and I just hope there's going to be another game because there's only 4 games in the franchise, one of which is only in Japan.
When was the last game released?
Back in 2015, Mega Mix for the 3DS, which basically took a bunch of games from the previous 3 games and added in some new ones and then just put it together into one game.
And you've been playing a bit of Jackbox as well, I hear.
Yeah, with some friends. It's nice to have party games sometimes, kind of to unwind from a stressful day or something. Plus, you never know what people are going to do. It can be a real blast to play some games.
That segment out of the way, and now we get down to the real nitty-gritty, so to speak. This is the segment Topics to Discuss, because this is a podcast and it's serious. How did you come about making RPG Maker games? And, where did you start?
As I said before, I started making in high school. I knew I wanted to make a game, but I didn't know what to make it in, so I looked up, like, game making something or whatever. I wound up getting Game Maker 7, tried to make something, instantly crashed the program. And then somehow I managed to find RPG Maker 2003, and I made something, and that didn't crash the program, so I kept using it until I figured out what the heck I was doing.
If there's one thing that 2K3 is, it's robust.
Yes, very robust. Honestly, my first game was, like, designed on paper to be a platformer, but I have no idea how to make a platformer, so I pretty much just made a regular old RPG.
Even to this day, it's so hard to make just a platformer in RPG Maker that works well.
Yeah.
Dramatic flashbacks.
Remember the time that I made you a birthday game and I had a platforming...
Yeah, I remember that. To be fair, it actually wasn't that bad. I've seen worse.
There are many ways to screw it up in platforming games in RPG Maker, or just in any maker in general.
Yeah, but this one actually wasn't half bad, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't expect anything less from Lavender for it to be, base level of good quality. What about you, Sol? How did you discover RPG making and game development in general?
It's actually a funny story, but for many years I was still using Scratch, which was that one GUI-based program where you snap blocks together to make games. About a few years in, I came across Game Maker, much like Lavender did, but it was actually version 8, not 7. I managed to make something that didn't crash, but it wasn't much better. It was this weird Pong type game where you had to break bricks, kind of like Arkanoid, but somehow I managed to even screw that up. Like when you release the arrow button, the paddle would just keep going, and yeah. So I gave up on Game Maker, went back to Scratch for a few years, and my friend introduced me to the now known as the illegal version of RPG Maker 2003. I didn't know what to do with it at first because it just looked too confusing, but eventually I came back after a few months, and I made one of my first RPG Maker games, which is now infamous, the first Taney's Adventure game. You know, the Silver Edition that I released on the Armin site? This was the prequel to that, and it is not going to be released ever due to personal reasons. Shortly after that, though, I discovered that the RPG Maker software was on Steam, and I decided to pick up RPG Maker XP. I think this was just before 2003 went on Steam, but then 2003 did go on Steam, and I wanted it, and a friend got it for me, and yeah, that's basically how I got into using RPG Maker. And now I own basically every piece of RPG Maker software, including VX.
That's the only one I don't have.
Yes, the wonderful VX engine.
Yes, the middle child.
Taney's Adventure 2 was actually not my second game. I made a few others before then. But then for some reason I felt the need to remake it so that it was actually acceptable. So I made the Silver Edition, and that's the version you can play right now on RPGmaker.net, which I don't advise you to do because my games have gotten a lot better since then. Let's just say that.
So go play that, or don't play it, play Fight for Life instead, which we are going to discuss soon. Yeah, so what types of games in general are you interested in or interested in creating, and what inspires you to create?
The RPG genre is probably one of my favorites because it just, I don't know, the idea of going on your own personal adventure just stuck with me. One of the first RPGs I've ever played was Pokemon Diamond version. Besides that, I also like racing games and platform games, and basically, generally, I like games where you can actually do something and get to a goal. Online games, you might have heard of this one called Fortnite. I'm not a big fan of games like that. I don't know what it is about them, but they seem boring to me. I'd rather be actually doing something, putting something towards a goal, rather than just, I don't know how to describe it. But basically, those types of games just didn't click for me. I'm more of a single-player kind of guy.
Yeah, well, there's a certain thing to be discussed about, like, the idea of an objective or a goal. I've heard that games like multiplayer games in history, such as starting from like Counter-Strike and moving on, have been well known to be really painful but addictive. They're like super competitive games that don't really emphasize progression. They've begun to bring in progression more and more through like buffs and so on that you'd gain through, and levels and XP systems, but in general the appeal just comes from being able to master a skill, much like a sport or something like that, and to beat others basically, for competitive types.
And I'm not saying that all multiplayer games are bad, because there are a few fun multiplayer games like the sandbox game Terraria. It's because you have an objective to complete in the multiplayer game. It's not just pointless fighting like Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, or Fortnite. No, you're actually working together towards a goal.
Yeah, I can see how for you would be really like motivated by progression and seeing progress towards a goal instead of I suppose, like, because there's a difference between that and, like, say, a sport, like football or something, where the goal is to get better at something. But instead of that, you're probably looking more for, like, a story, a progression, a set of objectives to complete.
Yeah, for the most part.
Lavender, what types of games interest you? What inspires you to create?
Well, the kind of games I'm into, they really have to give something that I need, you know? I'm not just gonna play a game just because it's there. Or like, I like things that have a meaningful story, a meaningful message to them. Either that or offer some sort of catharsis or something. Sometimes I have like anger issues and stuff, so I like to play fighting games on occasion.
So, what is your specific method for creating a game? And it can vary widely between developers process, but I just want to know what Lavender and Soul, how they go about making games.
So my method, it's sort of in two parts, because like I like to work on the seat of my pants, but I need to have a structure to do that. So like I build myself sort of a sandbox of a setting to work within and try to figure out what should be possible and stuff. And then after that, then I try to figure out like what I want to convey to the player and stuff, of what I want them to be able to do in this sandbox. Of course, I don't give them the sandbox, that would be insane, but I give them like a small chunk of the sandbox with the illusion that there's something greater within that setting.
I like that idea, like you have a greater world and you're just letting them play around it in like a subset of it. And you go about like spinning quite a intense setting. I'd say you go probably quite a bit into world building, maybe more than most people. You come up with terminology for almost everything in world, and all these concepts and ideas clashing, which you may get a little bit of inspiration from Homestuck. Would that be correct?
Yes, I get a lot of inspiration from Homestuck. In fact, Sethstuck is like actually a fan work that's vaguely based in the Homestuck setting. I can't call it a universe because it has more than one universe in it.
That's crazy because I've only scratched the surface of Homestuck. I've read like a little bit into it, maybe a couple of hours. And what I've known about Homestuck is that it just mashes together so many different forms, universes literally, and just jumps between concepts so much. And that's something that I see that I see. Obviously, Sethstuck is based in the Homestuck setting, or it's quite
Yes, it's based in the
weird.
Homestuck setting, but it doesn't use any of the Homestuck characters because it uses a section where you don't really need any of the actual Homestuck characters in it.
It seems like a mishmash of so many different forms. Like people speak in different ways. Some of them will have no capitals. Some of them will speak in different colors. It's just, I see it as an extremely creative way of like conveying different personalities.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about how I did the text in Sethstuck, you'll notice that there's no name tags on the text boxes. That's because, like, nearly all the people that are talking are some form of Seth, so I wanted it to be able to read, like, it could just be Seth just talking to himself.
In terms of gameplay, how do you go about tackling that?
That's a tough one, because, like, most of the time it's either an afterthought, something that's thought up while working on it. It really all depends.
And, like, balancing battles as well?
When it comes to balancing battles, that tends to just be, like, a trial and error for me, because, like, I'm not much of a numbers person.
Yeah, it's just like testing out a battle, seeing if it feels right. And I've noticed a lot of the moves and the actions correspond to like story elements, so there's a little bit of like resonance there.
Yeah, I try to make sure that the moves have something to do with like the setting, you know.
How about you, Soul? How do you go about making a game? Say you've got just a blank sheet of paper, or you just sit down at your computer and you want to make a game. How do you tackle this?
Honestly, I just wing it most of the time. Whatever comes to mind, I will basically see if it sticks or not. Sometimes I might brainstorm a little bit, seeing, what else could work for this game? And then I'm like, oh, I already know. How about a mountain setting or something like that? But there is one thing. I usually like working within certain limitations. For example, making pixel art. Sometimes I like working within a specific color set because it just forces me to think outside the box a bit more. As for adding certain features or certain levels, usually I just go off feedback that I get from certain people by sending them copies of the game in progress. And this basically gives me an idea of what works and what doesn't work for my game so I can make it more polished, basically. It's basically really simple.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your screenshots being posted up, given feedback on some of them. And yeah, I really love your colourful art style, both of your colourful art styles, actually, unique in different ways. I'm just going to talk about Souls' game, Bread and Battered. Breaded and Battered, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
There's like pieces of bread and toast and jelly and peanut butter and they're like fighting these monsters within this universe. So you kind of riffed off that like biscuity, toasty theme, didn't you?
Yeah, basically the entire world was like edible. The trees were broccoli and cauliflower. Houses were made of graham crackers. And funnily enough, this was actually inspired by a flip note that I got. Remember Flipnote Studio?
Oh yeah.
There was this one adventure flip note that also had a sandwich character called Pibnj, P-B-N-J, those letters, who was your sidekick on the adventure. And that's what inspired the entire game, funnily enough.
What do you think of non-RPG games made in RPG Maker? What do you know of any weird stuff made in RPG Maker that isn't in the RPG genre? And as a side note, how do you make a game interesting without battles?
I know that Lavender said something about using different types of confrontation. I tried experimenting with this with like this opinion fighting zone where you fight with your opinions. But that didn't really work out because I didn't really have a whole lot of material to work with. While I do think that RPG Maker makes RPG-type games best, there are definitely some good non-RPG games made in the engine. Like Grimps the Christmas Puzzle by Momeka.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, Momeka is like a god in a way.
I'm just looking it up. Grimps a Christmas Puzzle, short puzzle adventure game. A short but sweet experience captures the feeling of old school puzzle games and corny Christmas themed cartoons. It's just wonderful. I loved the puzzle design, the pixel art. It's one of my favorite games of its year, definitely.
As for myself, well, I've infamously tried making a racing game in RPG Maker. You probably know it as my April Fool's joke, Fight for Life Carts. Yeah, that didn't really work out, let's just say that.
Honestly, I actually wanted to add some content to it, but unfortunately you encrypted the project, so I couldn't add anything to it.
What about you, Lavender? Do you have any ideas about non-RPG Maker games non-RPG games made in RPG Maker and how they could be interesting?
One thing for sure, I definitely get a kick out of them. I'm actually one of those weird people that aren't really that much about regular RPGs that are about the usual battles and stuff. Those tend to be kind of boring for me. So I tend to veer more towards an adventure-ish side. And I've definitely made a handful of games that have gone into this realm, like A Snowball's Chance, which is still in development, and which is how do I explain it?
It's like an adventure game where you're with a group of friends and one stranger, but yeah, that. And basically you're trying to survive in this snow forest place.
What's the gameplay like? Is it a visual novel or is it a puzzle game?
It's not a visual novel, but it's kind of a cross between an RPG and a survival type game, where you can fish for things, you can gather materials. There's also parts of the game where you can choose your own way of doing things, like crossing a river, and there's a cooking system.
It's sort of like D&D if you removed all of the combat, crossed with Animal Crossing. And then somehow I was stuck in cooking because I like cooking. The fishing system is literally just random chance for mine because I didn't want to put in an entire fishing system just for something that you're going to get a fish or a fish man from. Yeah, I was looking for all sorts of scripts, but then I was like, why do I even need this? Trying to get the player a way to get a certain sort of ingredient, because you usually do the fishing in order to get the fish, but of course you also have to trade a worm for it, which is also an ingredient.
And that's important in games. You need to know what to shave from your game so that it will provide the experience that best benefits the message you're trying to bring across, I suppose, or the type of experience you're trying to bring. Because if you have a side fishing game in a serious horror setting, then it's not going to well, unless it's really it's a joke or something, then it's not going to go down well. I've always found that with RPG Maker games and battles, when it comes to horror games, the battles that are in horror games often take me out of the immersion that's required for horror to scare me.
I think that's the reason why Froggy had the rule of no turn-based battles in that Halloween compilation that we did. So we had to only do things that wouldn't have any turn-based battles in them.
That makes sense, and it's hard sometimes to build an atmosphere of horror and build that tension, so that's probably sometimes why just people default to battles, because they pad your game quite a bit sometimes.
They definitely help with making a game longer.
Yeah, because it's possible to go the other way and make battles too easy, which is in my game, basically. Because battles weren't the main focus of my game, and you have a time limit, I try to make them as short as possible. But I think I just heard it in the long run, though.
They were nice, and I would much rather there be short, easy battles than long, grueling, annoying, unfair battles. If the battles are too long, then they're going to, ruin the pacing of your game, I think. I think the best RPGs that I've played have short battles that really test your strategies. That's why something like 3 Ghostly Roses, which is one of my favorite RPG Maker games of all time, has super short battles that really test your memory and your ability to improvise on the fly. What do you think about custom art in RPG Maker games, and what benefit does it bring? What's your stance on it, I guess?
Custom art is basically essential in any RPG game. I mean, you can use the default assets if you want to, but be warned that it might give your game kind of a less professional feel, considering how bad of a reputation it has, being used by all sorts of newcomers for their games. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. You can definitely use it. It's not It's not that it's bad, it just has a bad reputation with people using it and all that.
Yeah, they're going to think of RPG Maker as soon as they see it. But I know that if we had Liberty on this podcast, she would vehemently defend RTP and RPG Maker games. We'll represent her here by saying, yes, you can use RTP if you'd like, but custom art definitely has its benefits.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of a custom art snob, so like I kind of prefer to have custom art there because I don't know, the chibi sprites seem to be a mood killer, especially when you're going for a serious game.
Exactly. I mean, I think we're kind of misrepresented like here because I am also a very big custom art junkie, and I would prefer all my games to have custom art. But yeah, I just like an aesthetic. I like to build my own aesthetic, and visuals is just one of those major things that you can like change easily. Well, it's hard to build a cohesive visual art style sometimes, especially if you haven't got great art skills. I think it's almost essential to building your own unique visual style in your game. Alright, so we'll just go into the section where we go into like original projects. I'm going to start with Lavender. I'm going to start with the project Sethstuck. Sethstuck is a game made by Lavendersiren. Seth is a character by Lavender. They are part of an ongoing canon which spans multiple formats that's been going on for years. The best way to learn about them would be to play Sethstuck, a game made in RPG Maker XP where Seth must get out of the underworld and solve the mystery of why they were sent there in the first place. Sethstuck is made to be a companion to the narrative Let's Play of Link's Awakening that took place from February to October 2015 in a thread on Let's Social. Is that correct?
Yeah, though right now I'm working on doing a revamped version of that Let's Play on MS Paint Fan Adventures.
Yeah, the game takes place in the same vague setting as Homestuck. There's also a bunch of role-playing logs over at Lavender's site, Lost Pawns, SBarg 1.5, and they are one of the GMs or Game Masters for SBarg version 2 and is a SBarg veteran, which came from a Homestuck ARG that was run on Tumblr with players using various platforms for discussion. The Homestuck ARG ended, but that was where SBarg was born. SBarg didn't have to end, however, in April 11 of 2016, apparently it did, which is why I believe SBarg 1.5 was born. Is that correct?
Let me explain. So, SBarg V2, that went on from, like, all through 2013, and we finished our RP session in December, so then we had the post-session stuff, but then, like, me and Power Kitten wanted to sort of do more RPing in a section where we could actually do something with, like, our old characters from SBarg V1, because, like, in between SBarg V1 and V2, there was this thing called the Reset, which is sort of like the Scratch if you know your Homestuck stuff, but apparently slightly different, where it didn't flip-flop the Guardians, it just reset your character. So anyways, SBarg 1.5 of Lost Pawns takes place in the furthest ring, which is the section that in the middle of nowhere, in between game sessions. So, like, the SBarg 1 characters that we had would have adventures there, and, like, the things that they had to do would be, like, to modify Seth's memories so that they would do certain things in SBarg V2.
I find it so interesting the way that you've, like, carried this on from a Link's Awakening Let's Play that was posted on a forum, and then some RPing, and then you just kind of create your own universe from this, and then from that came Sethstuck, this amazing game that I think is really cool and everyone should check it out. So I'd just like to ask, what inspired you to make Sethstuck?
Well, anyways, it all started sort of when my friend finally gave me a copy of RPG Maker XP. Like, I had always wanted to use that program, but it was always too expensive, and, like, I didn't have a way to buy things online back then when it was popular, but I had always wanted to use it. Like, even when VX came out, I wanted to use XP, and then it's like, yes, I finally have this! At the end of Seth's Awakening, the Let's Play of Link's Awakening that I was doing, there was this thing that another reader posted, which was like a fuzzy version of the last screen, and that meant that I had to go through the entire Let's Play and collect all of the instruments in order to get to that part of the thing, because I sort of have a sort of collaborative style when it comes to SBarg stuff. And because it was fuzzy, I figured that meant that something would go wrong at the end, so I tried to figure out what would go wrong at the end. And like there's another thing to this. Have I mentioned Terrible Game? Terrible Game is this game that my ex-girlfriend made like a while back in VX Ace. It's basically just a friend game with a bunch of crappy stuff in it. But like she made this one town that was entirely filled with Seths. And like, you know, I always like when people use my original characters and show me stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, someone actually is a fan.
Exactly.
On the topic of Terrible Game, wasn't there that one you made for Make a Dumb Game this weekend?
Oh yeah, that was the sequel to Terrible Game, which was Terrible Game 1.5 Lost Marbles. Anyways, in Terrible Game, there was this town called Seth Town, and it was like this incredibly edgy town completely filled with Seths. The background music was all of me from Shadow the fucking Hedgehog. And like, the main thing that really got me is that the entire place was filled with caskets. Like, you could not walk somewhere without tripping over a casket. And I was wondering, who was in these caskets? And like, thinking, what if Seth is in all of those caskets? So then I got to thinking about like, how would all these dead Seths be like and stuff? And like, there's this thing in Homestuck called Dream Bubbles, where like dead versions of the player go when they die and stuff. And like, that sort of fit in with that sort of idea. And like, I was thinking about like all the different offshoots of Seth, like over the years, every time they've died and stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that. Comes from, so it's like the inspiration of games coming from other games in the same universe, and just creating this vast universe of games that are all in the same continuity, I guess, or even just inspired by each other.
Yeah, I love long things of continuity and deep lore like that.
That pretty much describes Homestuck in a nutshell. So I'll just would you like to give us a brief synopsis of Sethstuck, or do you want me to? I've got one prepared here, but you can if you'd like.
You can do yours.
Okay, and then you can just fill in the blanks if I get something wrong. So apparently, Seth has been in a coma for 10 months. In their dreams, they went through the entire plot of Link's Awakening and a few other games here and there while trying to recover from a crisis of identity. During Link's Awakening, they collected all 8 instruments, but something has gone wrong, which made Seth fall even deeper into their coma, sinking deep into the underworld. They're greeted in the underworld by Thanatos, in a tower that's completely populated by doomed past versions of Seth, of which Thanatos is one of them. Every time Seth died or could have died, there's a version of them that did in fact die and appeared there. And they all have unique nicknames, but as Seth of the Alpha timeline, they're Seth Alpha. But Alpha Seth is still alive in this dead dimension, and somehow has to figure out what happened and how to get out.
That about covers it.
It's an incredible story. The diary entries. Why did you think diary entries was a good idea for Sethstuck?
The diary entries, they've actually been around longer than Sethstuck. Like, they were around during Lost Pawns, and like, they're from this other version of Seth, Beta Seth, who later went by Thorin. Like, I tried to link their two stories together because, like, Thorin was supposed to be the version of Seth who eventually became Kronos, which is, like, the big bad in Sabarg.
And what are you most proud of about your game, Sethstuck?
That's a tough question because there's a lot of things. I don't know, I just really like working with stories that have Seth in them, but like, this one is a little bit more personal because, you know, like, the whole thing about that particular arc is like, Seth is going through this crisis of identity because the whole thing with Lost Pawns, they just recently found out that like, their memories have been altered and stuff, so they wound up doing slightly less violent things. And like, while they're in this underworld, they're like, you know, finding themselves.
And what were some troubles you had while making the game?
There were a couple of things. They were mostly things that I didn't entirely know how to do yet. Like, there was this one thing that I wanted to do where, like, it would tally every single time that you got a game over and would output it to a file, and I wanted it to be also read back so that a dead Seth would appear in the map that you died.
Just to make the player feel bad.
Just to make the player be like, holy fuck, that actually had impact. It remembered that I died.
Things, when games do things like that, they record things that you didn't expect them to record. It really impresses me.
Yeah, like I managed to get it to record the deaths, but I didn't manage to actually get it to read them. And I kept on running into nil errors to the point where I actually named one of the Seths Nil.
Great, that's fantastic. And what do you have in future plans for Sethstuck, or just in general, where do you want to take us with your games?
Well, when it comes to Sethstuck, there's this epilogue that I've been trying to work on called Schrodinger's Epilogue. Rather fitting name for it. Who knows when it's going to come out?
I'm going to move on to Soul right now and talk about his game Fight for Life.
All right.
So Fight for Life is Soul's entry into Seasons of RMN 2, created in RPG Maker XP. He chose Autumn for his season since it's nostalgic for him. Protagonists Lake and Valerie have both been firm friends despite being teenagers. However, Lake's friend Valerie falls sick and pale for unknown reasons. The life is being sucked out of her, pretty much. Lake calls for help, to which a doctor responds, knowing a cure that will potentially save her from death. Lake sets out on a quest to retrieve the doctor's ingredients to save Valerie from death, and I assume it's called because he has to fight for life. That's my first question. Why is it called Fight for Life?
Really, I just didn't have any other names, and Fight for Life was actually the name of this Atari Jaguar fighting game. And because I thought it would be perfect for my game, I just used it because technically this character is fighting for her life, and you're fighting for her life as well.
Is there a reason why it's all lower caps?
It's just a stylistic choice.
What inspired you to create Fight for Life?
Not really a whole lot, to be honest with you. It just came from scratch. I was playing around with a new tile set I came up with, and from there I just got the idea to make Fight for Life. I don't really know, honestly.
Things just come out of your brain.
My ideas come from the strangest places.
That's the thing, you seem to have quite you don't really plan as you go, would that be correct?
Yeah, things just sort of happen. I don't take it very seriously. Basically, whatever comes out of me, if I think it sticks, I just put it in. And I was thinking of having this plot idea because it's something I haven't really tried yet. I thought it'd be interesting to have a game with a constant time limit, but I would wonder, what would happen how would I justify this time limit? And that's basically where the idea started from.
Because your game has a time limit, it was 90 minutes?
Yeah, 90 minutes. It used to be 60 minutes, but I extended it.
Yeah, and it makes it kind of unique that you have to fight quickly and make your way through the game with speed. Also, I'll just ask Lavender another question. Lavender, do you plan a lot before you start, or do you just go as you go?
As I mentioned before, I do a combination of planning and pantsing. I need to know what I have available to work with in order to work with it, you know?
Soul, what were your inspirations for Fight for Life? And, for example, how are the battles inspired by RPG Maker 2000? What made you go with the current graphical style? And the storyline? I guess you've answered some of it, but,
At this point in time, I had already been working on a game with a similar art style known as Tiny Mega Dungeons, which never came out, unfortunately. It was this, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like a roguelike game where you play through dungeons and all that. That's where the art style came from. And my idea to use this system, I found this system that allowed me to put text boxes in the battles. Because in my opinion, the RPG Maker XP default battle system is arguably trash.
There have been complaints about it, yeah.
It literally doesn't tell you what's going on at all. I mean, it does flash sometimes, but, come on.
You need that conveyance to the player, right? Sometimes I play battles in RPG Maker games, and the text flies by so fast I can't read anything that's happening. So it's quite difficult sometimes to understand who dealt damage, where, what move did they use?
Yeah, I should probably slow that down, but if I did slow that down, that would mean more time wasted, so I don't know if I should or not. That's a big dilemma in my game, actually.
Right.
I'm not sure if I should just keep things a normal length or speed them up because of the time limit. I had to extend the time limit from 60 to 90 minutes, so if people want to, say, explore a bit more, maybe take a look at some of the items they have, or look at some signs, etc., so they could do that before the time limit runs out.
How did you tackle gameplay when it came to Fight for Life? Yeah, how did you design your gameplay?
It was designed around Autumn, because Seasons for RMN 2, that competition needed a season for your game to be based around. I chose autumn.
Right.
And I added in just a whole bunch of autumn activities like leaf piles. You can go in leaf piles. You rake leaves, help someone out with a pie, pumpkin pie. And because I had nothing else, I added in this foraging event as well. Unfortunately, that's where my ideas ran out, so I just winged it from there.
That's one of the things that's so interesting about your game. It's got a lot of, like, soothing elements to it and friendliness. And I really enjoyed how pleasant a lot of the game was.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that something you have in all your games, or was it intentional just for Fight for Life, or is it just you like games that are pleasant?
Usually my games are calm. I don't really try to put chaotic elements in them because, well, I just want the player to enjoy my game. If I just put in a ton of things at once, it'd overwhelm the player, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to hurt the player too much.
Yeah, I'm glad that you nerfed the spike maze.
Yeah, I had to nerf the spike maze. The original spike maze was extremely convoluted. Basically, there was this maze you had to go through, but the spikes were constantly rotating. And I basically just got rid of a few of the rows and columns, and now it's a bit more tolerable. I did add a bit of an anti-anger measure. Basically, you don't have to go back through the same room, because once you rescue Lily, I made it so that the spike balls go away.
Yes, and some of that actually works well with what I think about game design, is that if you go through a challenge once, then when you're backtracking through it, just sometimes it makes sense to remove that challenge because otherwise it just becomes repetitive, right?
Yeah, and I don't want that. I always think of the player as a person.
That's such a great line. You always think of the player as a person because some people just design for themselves and they don't even think about what the player might think or feel when they're playing their games. They're just like, I want this, I want that. Let's put that in because I like it.
Let's say, for example, that you're designing a game and you put in this death trap, like a big spike that comes down and hits you. You might know about it, but the player who's playing that game might not know about it, so they could get unfairly killed.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the name of the game in some instances, like I Want to Be the Boshi or some games like that, where it's intentionally hard and intentionally just out of nowhere. It's intentional like that, but I'm not about that. I think of the player as a person and I consider things.
Well, the thing about games like that and Super Meat Boy and stuff, difficult platformers, you got to have a really quick turnaround time with death times. Like, you die and then you need to come back really quickly. Otherwise, your player's just going to be like, long game over screen. They just want to be able to try again as soon as possible. So, yeah. That's one way of respecting your player. I think even though it seems like, oh, this is the hardest game ever, it still has ways of respecting the player's time, and they just do it in a really roundabout way where they also want to punish the player as much as possible.
And that's why games like V6, that one game
I love
where
that
you
game.
flip
Yeah.
gravity. That's why games like that work, because sure, you might die a lot, but checkpoints are plentiful, so you can just try a challenge again and again until you get the feel for it, so it's fair for the player.
I love that game. Yeah.
And Super Meat Boy's levels are often short, so if you do die, it's not that big of a deal. The level is so short anyway.
These are like the pinnacle, the founding games of indie gaming, like the commercial indie games. I remember fondly just thinking, yes, finally some indie games that are coming through and doing things that AAA games wouldn't. Another question, what are you most proud of about your game, Fight for Life?
The fact that I was able to put everything I could in 4 months. Not 4 months, 4 weeks. I had only a month to make the whole game from scratch. And the fact that I managed to put in everything I could, including some, the entire game uses custom graphics, so I had to do all of that. Just the fact that I was able to put together such a but such a good game, apparently, in such a short amount of time, it's just, I don't even know how I managed to do that.
I just switch it over to Lavender quickly. You also created a game that was like within a month's time, Unfinished Stories, and you put a lot into that game, a lot of time.
Still extremely, amazed at how much I managed to do for that one.
You both know what it's like to crunch so much work into a small amount of time.
Yeah, definitely.
What's the secret to that? This is for both of you. What do you think is the secret for creating a large amount of content or a good game in a short amount of time, say for an event?
A deadline, a guideline, and working as many times as possible and remembering to actually eat something.
Yes, eat things.
I mostly agree with Lavender here. Basically, you gotta know when to motivate yourself, but also know when to give yourself a little break. You don't want to tire yourself out too often. Sometimes you can just take a minute away from the computer, go do something else. Maybe when you come back, you'll have a new idea.
What do you have in future plans for Fight for Life, or future games? Just where do you want to take us?
Well, for Fight for Life, I believe that I released the current beta version that just goes up to the final cave area. You can play that version now because the game's on hiatus and I want to give something to show that I am working on it. But as of now, I'm working on this 2-player cooperative system where you and the other player can do certain moves like tossing one another across a pit or up onto a high ledge in order to push a switch or something like that.
I love that. It's great.
Oh yeah, like in the Mario and Luigi games?
Yeah, kind of like that. They were a big inspiration at the time. As for other games, though, I'm trying to expand my horizons into other genres. Mostly the platforming and racing genres. Don't worry, I'm not making another racing game in RPG Maker again. I think what made that game not work was the terrible AI I had to make. RPG Maker has no path system whatsoever, so I literally just had to make a bunch of events that turn the cards at the corners. And because of that, it was just pitifully easy.
We'll move on to our final segment. RMN asks questions we probably don't know the answers to, but we'll try. Piano asks, what is your favorite project you've completed? Why? And what project disappointed you the most and why?
To be honest with you, I haven't really completed an awful lot of projects, as evidenced by I only have like 4 released ever. But both Fight for Life and Breaded and Battered are both really good projects. I mean, I feel like both of them forced me to think outside the box a little bit, creatively speaking. Yeah, I really enjoyed working on those projects, even though I was sick during the development of Breaded and Battered, unfortunately. As for something I'm disappointed by, Zeta Mix, which was this weird kind of mishmash game I was trying to make for the Abrupt Ending Party. But it ended up a train wreck. I only managed to get the battle system done, and that was a buggy mess. There was a hard mode that wasn't even completable half the time. And on top of that, it was a mess. I don't want to go back on that. And it wasn't even completed in time anyway, so why did I even bother?
Oh. Yeah, how about you, Lavender?
For me, I'd have to say Sethstuck is definitely my favorite. I've probably mentioned the details earlier in this because it's just like so personal to me, you know? Yeah. Also, Unfinished Stories is definitely high on my list just because how much I really put into it, you know?
Yeah. And how about the project you're most disappointed in?
The one I'm most disappointed in would have to be Just in Time. The one I made for the Swap Together with 2 with Deflopus. Because, like, I put Seth in it, and I was like, here, make this game, but do you want to know what Deflopus did? He did the one thing I told him not to do, and he tried to read Homestuck in 2 weeks. And so there was barely any gameplay, barely any sort of message. It was basically just a sort of complete one mission and then retcon itself like Sonic 06.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Like, later on, I managed to remaster it a little bit so that it was at least, like, workable, but, you know, I'm still disappointed in it. It could have been better.
Cool. Another question. SB asks, what are the major or recurring themes you try to communicate through your games?
Usually I try to make them very family-friendly, with the extreme exception of Tiny's Adventure 2 Silver Edition, because the main character is as profane as possible. But that's just the characteristic of the character. Other than that, though, I usually try to keep things friendly, and more on the lighthearted side. I try not to go too dark into things.
Right. How about you, Lavender?
I've looked this over last night, and I found out that, like, much of the major themes in my games really revolve around friendship. Like, just how important friendship can be and, like, you know, the practical uses of the power of friendship. Like, you always hear about that in anime and stuff, but, like, it has, like, practical uses. And, like, Hey, friends are important. Sometimes they're the one thing that gets you through the day. You can't always count on a hero, but if you have a friend or two, maybe, just maybe, there's still hope, you know?
We'll go with one last question, and this question is by Alaskan Emily, and they ask, how do you overcome procrastination?
Sometimes procrastination is just inevitable. I found out that procrastination is usually caused by being bored. Sometimes if you're bored, you might find yourself going on other places instead of focusing on your game. So if you're out of ideas, maybe it would help to take a break for a while, as I've said earlier. Maybe to put your mind on something else. But try not to take too long. I mean, just get off the computer in general. When you're procrastinating, you tend to go on other websites on your computer. So I suggest going off the computer and taking a break. And I don't know.
That's good advice, of course. You just disconnect yourself, I suppose.
When it comes to procrastination, that's sort of a tough one, especially since a lot of times when I run into that sort of thing, I'm pretty sure it's mostly rooted in my ADHD. What I'd really like is if other people would actually tell me what to do, but unfortunately, I gotta pick up my own ass and tell myself what to do in order for anything to get done, because nobody seems to get anything done unless told, especially in the teams that I've been in the past before showing up to Armament.
That's so true. Team games are some of the hardest kinds of games to actually complete, first of all. A lot of them, you get together as a team and then sparks fly, and then it's like, nope, not gonna finish this game. There's so many games that are like that. So even a team game that is completed is a miracle, and yeah, it's very much its own beast.
Yeah, finding someone to help you with something is really hit or miss, and I'm really glad that my game dev partner over at Falling Star has always been pretty cool. Her name is Angela. She sometimes goes by Nyx. She's pretty cool.
Oh, nice, yes. And you're creating a Snowball's Chance with her?
Yes.
I'll finish with one question by Marion, and this is a question, what are your hobbies outside of game making?
My hobbies? That would be drawing and cooking. I definitely like to do a lot of cooking because, like, it's helpful for both health reasons and just, having a regular old hobby, I like trying to get better at cooking and stuff. I mostly do stir fry and stuff.
Yeah, I see your pictures on the Discord all the time of dinners. It's always good to see. Tonight's dinner with Lavender.
My sewing machine kind of busted, and I don't really have that many projects to do when it comes to sewing.
Sorry to hear that.
So, what about yourself?
I don't really have any hobbies because I don't have a life. Okay, but to be honest with you here, I do play some games occasionally. But other than that, I like to take walks outside just to get my body moving and get fresh air inside me, I guess.
I love walks.
Yes.
Walks are good.
I personally like the rain, though. Walking in the rain. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just more relaxing, I guess.
You have a jacket on?
Usually I do, yeah. Outside of that, though, I do like to draw. And that's about it.
Oh, well, thank you both for being on this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And sharing of yourselves. Yeah. Here's the point if you want to plug anything, or if you want to advertise something. I'm pretty sure you've already advertised your games, but yeah, here you go. Here's your...
I don't have anything, so take it away.
Okay, which one? Snowball's Chance is working on level 2. Hopefully that should be up by the end of the year. Jello in the Valley of Duh, I'm going to try to get that finished by the end of the month. Hopefully.
Just a note made in post. Jello in the Valley of Duh has been released already. It's just these podcasts take a long time to come out. I'm sorry. You can check that out on rpgmaker.net. Under the name Lavendersiren, Jello in the Valley of Duh. Back to the podcast right now.
Thank you so much. We're just going to end it here.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
See you later, everyone.
Adios.
Bye.
See ya.